get ready to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We start with any remarks from the public. Everyone. I'd also like to look at the in the drive to approve previous minutes, and we need a motion needed for that.
Yeah, so that's the December 2nd meeting. And just while the committee's looking at those, just Jackie's joining us by phone tonight, our chair. And so any votes we take, any motions, just have to be roll call when we do them. So we'll just have to go through that process.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion made by Bettina.
All right, I will second that motion.
Motion made by Bettina,
Yep.
second by Michelle.
Yep. And then we just have to roll call vote, Dave.
So we have to do a roll call vote on each one. So, Joe? Aye.
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Aye. Bettina?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then you, Dave. Aye.
Dave, aye.
Yeah, so we get 5.
5.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next is the report from the superintendent.
We just have, actually, right before that.
Right
reports
before
from
the reports
committees.
from the committees. Any reports from the committees?
CPAC, PTO,
I
Bettina?
do.
Great.
Yes.
Nothing for tonight.
Okay, and Bettina has
Jackie.
something, Jackie.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I wrote it down. Okay, so the PTO met recently, and they approved the Think Big Teachers Grants. They awarded $5,000 to support several great projects, along with an additional $2,000 for other school needs. Since the spending freeze, the PTO has received some other requests that don't necessarily align with the grant program, that like the way that it was originally designed for, such as like playground equipment. So they're working to see if they can use their funds or figure out other ways to potentially help fund those. They're currently selling tickets for the first student adult dance, which will be held on January 31st. And the next PTO meeting is January 21st.
Great, thank you. Let's move on. So now,
I think so.
moving on to the report from the superintendent.
Great, thank you, Dave. Happy New Year, all. Good to see you. Welcome back. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. A couple of updates. Senator Tarr, we think should be joining us at some point, so we'll have him sort of plug in when he gets here. The goal of that at a previous school committee meeting, we had talked about just funding across the state, Chapter 70, Prop 2.5, and I think the goal was to hear a little bit more from Senator Tarr and the opportunity for the committee to ask some questions as they may come up. So we will see if that is still on cue for tonight. In the interim, a couple of updates. We have our friends from Rotary Club here, and they have a book donation. They've been making the rounds to the 3 school committees. We had Boxford a couple of weeks ago, and we had Topsfield not too far back. And Bernie is here from Rotary with Lisa, correct? Yeah, Bernie and Lisa. So if one or both of you want to come up to the mic just so the cameras can pick you up and just share a little bit more detail around the donation. And we appreciate our partnership with Rotary as always.
Sorry for the stick. We have one knee done, and the other one done pretty soon.
And for those of you that may not know, Bernie was a former superintendent of the Tri-Town schools. So Bernie retired, and then I came in 10 years ago. So we welcome Bernie back.
Lisa Foley is a Middleton resident, and a 20-year member of the Rotary Club, and
Thank you.
was responsible for a lot of the funding that we've raised over the years through the Fall Foliage Classic, which is our primary fundraiser for doing that. It's nice to see Joe again. How's Cheryl doing?
It's doing good, thank
Good.
you.
Good.
We said hello.
All right.
Yeah. The reason for being here tonight is working on a project that Peggy had put together which is taking the place of what we had done for years, which was a dictionary, thesaurus, and atlas project for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, given the resources that we have. So we have a check to present to the town, which will come back to the schools, $4,000 towards the literacy program that's coming in place. And that goes along with other projects that we do we present scholarships to graduating seniors at Masconomet and at the Tech. We also work with the food pantries, have worked with scouts over the years for the Eagle Scout and Gold Awards, and have done, the literacy project has been one of the hallmarks of what our club has done locally, and we're involved in local, regional, and international projects from time to time. Lisa likes to refer to us as a small but mighty club. We have a fewer numbers, but we are able to accomplish quite a bit. We meet generally twice a month, and we're always looking for new members or people who would like to visit and learn more about Rotary. So that having been said, are there any questions that people have? We'd be happy to try to answer them.
No?
Okay. Then we need somebody to volunteer for a Kodak moment.
Sure, no problem.
Well, thank you very much.
You want a picture, Bernie?
Yeah, we do want to have somebody take a picture. Do we see you?
Yeah, you want to go to this chair?
Sure.
You're the best.
Thank you so much. This is very generous.
Thank you.
Please, you have it.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much.
All right, here.
Steve, how about if you take a picture and then Lisa can get it?
All right, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Handle it.
Yeah.
Handle it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're good.
Thank you.
All right.
You're
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you, guys.
So do we need a motion to accept
Yes.
the donation?
Yes.
Okay. I will make that motion to, accept the $4,000 from.
1,000.
1,000.
Yes.
Okay. From the, is it the Middleton Rotary Club?
Just the Rotary Club.
The
Yeah.
Tri-Town Rotary Club.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Joe? Aye, right?
Yeah.
Roll call.
Roll call. Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
David, aye. Jackie?
Aye.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Bernie. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We'll have Steve process
Steve
that.
it, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Perfect. A couple of other updates. Assistant Superintendent of Operations search update. So Brian sent an email out to, I believe, either the chairs or all committees. I can't remember which he did. But just as a follow-up to that, so we did our first round of searches and did not unearth a candidate through that process. And so in talking with the chairs through that entire thing that we had navigated, we are reopening the search. So Brian has it reopened out on School Spring, Indeed, LinkedIn. I met with him today. We have a number of new applicants, and so that's good. And he'll keep that open until the time comes that we get the committee back together, and we'll go through the same exact process again of visits to the candidate's place, visits to our place, interviews with me, so on and so forth. The goal, again, as you may remember, we had a Tri-Town committee meeting scheduled for next week, hoping we had a couple of finalist candidates to present to you. So that meeting is off the books. So if you still have that Tri-Town meeting on your calendar for next week, that can come off the books. And then we do have a March 2nd Tri-Town meeting, and I think the goal would be for us to have a candidate, hopefully by then, process-wise, that we can then bring to the March 2nd meeting, or candidates rather, to bring to the March 2nd meeting, and then pick things up on the other side with that. So any questions or thoughts on that from anyone? Pretty straightforward. And then if it's okay with our chair tonight, I do not see Senator Tar yet. If you want, we could kind of maybe move along with some of these other things, and
Yep.
if then when he comes in, circle back.
So we're looking for the report.
Yep,
of the
from-
Assistant Superintendent.
Perfect. So Mr. Greenberg.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. What's included in the drive is the bus count information. My apologies for the delay. But in looking at the numbers, we do not have any overcrowding issues. And, you know, of course, we're always looking to see the performance improve, so we're still pushing that. And communication is ongoing with the vendor. But there, in terms of the numbers, you know, in the mornings and the afternoon, we do not have any issues that warrant taking any types of steps for additional busing or anything along those lines.
What is the maximum Capacity per bus.
So our buses are spec at what we call 77 passenger buses, which means 77 13-inch seats. All right, not everybody has a 13-inch bottom. So, ideal and efficient bus would be around 65 when you think about the age of the students and backpacks and possibly instruments. So an ideal or an efficient number would be 65.
Okay. And I'm not seeing us hitting that number.
No, what you could see is when the bus is doing a transfer, you could see when they're letting kids off at one school and then, other kids are boarding that one school to go over to the other. You could see numbers go up, for that interim piece. But no, we do not have anything that is even close.
Okay. And numbers seem to be higher in the mornings than they do.
Yes, because
In the
let's
afternoons.
think about, after-school activities,
Yeah.
whether they're on campus or not.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? No? Financial report is in the drive, even though it's not on the agenda, just so you guys know. Everything's still going forward in the sense of spending freeze. We're just trying to keep an eye on things. We're watching revenues from our tuition-based programs. I just want to make sure we're in a good spot. So spending freeze is still on. And I will stop and answer any questions you may have, but that's it.
I have no questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Should we introduce
Yes.
I'd like to introduce Bruce. Thank you very much for coming this evening. Yeah, we definitely like to speak with you and
Sure.
see if we appreciate you coming down to speak to.
No, I'm happy to
School
do it.
committee.
I appreciate the invitation from Dr. Morrison. Of course, always happy to talk about the inner workings of school funding in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What better way to start the new year? And I like the fact that
Yes.
we're very inclusive.
Very.
at this meeting.
Exactly.
It's always wonderful to be greeted by a dog.
Yeah,
That's our Hal Manning comfort dog. Jeff Bryson's the principal at Hal Manning. That's Howie.
Very nice.
Yes.
Well, Howie's doing a good job.
He is. Do you feel comfortable? As long as you feel comfortable, he's doing his job.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Wouldn't you say that's worth a couple $100,000 right there?
Easily. So Senator Tar, if you wouldn't mind, if you do want to stay there or come up here, we just need you near a mic. So if that mic
You know,
works, push
how
it a little
about
bit.
If I come up there?
That'd be great.
Sure.
Sure. You want to come right up here? You can join us. And then I think the goal, and we'll let the committee kind of lead this discussion with you, but just to kind of remind the committee, we had a meeting back in November, and I think there was just, some talk around Chapter 70 and talk around 2.5,
Yeah.
and just all the machinations behind that.
Sure.
And you've been just such a great partner to all of our committees across the Tri-Town for years. And the committee just thought an opportunity to come in for about 30 minutes or so and just kind of have a conversation about all those things, an opportunity for the committee to ask you some questions. So I don't know if the committee wants to start with some questions, or if you want to start with sort of like Chapter 70 and 2.5 at 30,000 feet. I don't know.
I'm happy to answer questions, actually, but not before I thank all of you for the work that you do, because I know it's not always glamorous, and I know sometimes it's tedious, and I know sometimes it's stressful, but I appreciate that all of you do it so that we can have quality education in the Tri-Town and in the three communities. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate that. And I'm always committed to working with all of my colleagues in the legislature to try to get you the fairest funding and the maximum funding that we possibly can. So happy to answer questions. You may risk a long-winded answer, but happy to answer whatever questions you might have. And I did bring a couple of visual aids in case we need them. So, but again, happy to talk. So.
I'm happy to start.
Sure.
Scott and I have discussed this. I think the biggest issue that I see from the state level is that we have significant problems, not just in Middleton, but throughout the state in terms of funding public education. And I know that there's been approximately, I think the number is 160 overrides since the governor's been in office. I think most of those overrides have to do with public safety and education. And, we're looking for solutions because as school committee members, I think it's really important to provide, a substantial, good income for our teachers, provide an education for our children. And I feel that an override every year is just not sustainable. And that's going to lead to possibly layoffs, cuts, and it will. I mean, there's already issues. I think it's almost, in my opinion, like a catastrophic level. And I just don't know where we have a lot of funds available at the state level that I don't think are really being utilized or given to public education. I know through many communities, because I've spoken to other people, layoffs of teachers, programs, things for students, and I really feel that why is the state taking a more aggressive approach towards, funding public schools? And is there monies that's available? I know I looked into the Federal Tax Relief Act. That's a federal program that's not offered in Massachusetts. There's things that I feel that Chapter 70 doesn't really work. Prop 2.5 really doesn't work. The funds aren't getting to the students. And what is a solution that could maybe come sooner than later? Because I know change takes a long time, right? Chapter 70 is not going to change next year.
Sure.
Prop 2.5 has never changed for 40 years. So where can we look as school committee members for a solution to kind of bridge that gap with the finances, and how we can make the state more aware that we need these funds?
So I'm going to start, when we talk about state funding, as you know, the principal way that we fund is through Chapter 70. And I'm going to share with you this chart, which indicates what we have been doing. And actually, there's enough here, I think we can probably just pass them around.
Thank you.
And what that chart is going to indicate, and you can see the trend line that is on it, is the amount of increase in Chapter 70 funding that's occurred over the last several years, and it's substantial. We were talking about, in fiscal year 2020, about $5 billion, and we're now over $7 billion. So that's a very substantial increase in what's being invested into our public schools through the Chapter 70 program. And in fact, we are now in nearly the final year. We've got 2 years to go to fully implement the Student Opportunity Act, which was a commitment, a major commitment of increasing resources and investments for school districts all across the Commonwealth. And so, from my perspective, the state has been very aggressive in increasing funding for public education. The difficulty is in a couple of different places. One of them is in many of our suburban school districts, we're experiencing decreasing enrollment. And as you know, the Chapter 70 formula is predicated on enrollment so that the dollars follow the student. So part of the difficulty that we have is that we've got declining enrollment but increasing cost. And that delta is what's driving a lot of what you're describing in terms of those disparities. And trying to change the Chapter 70 formula is a Herculean feat. It's something that I've been trying to do almost since it was adopted. I originally voted against the Education Reform Act of 1993 because of the shortcomings of the formula. That being said, one of the things that we as suburban legislators often try to do is find ways to supplement other accounts that don't depend on that Chapter 70 formula. So for instance, we try to increase minimum per pupil aid. We've been very successful at that over the last few years, going from what used to be $30 per pupil now to about $104 per pupil. We also try to impact regional school transportation and increase that percentage, driving it as close as we can to the 100% that's required in statute, but has never really been met, because those things don't depend on the formula. And so we have had some success with those. But you're absolutely right. When you talk about changing the formula, it is something very, very difficult to do. And in fact, it usually only happens when there is a review of it. And the last review of it occurred roughly in 2015. And that was because a group of us worked together to reconstitute the Foundation Budget Review Commission. The foundation budget originally was intended to be reviewed every few years, but it never was. So we finally got a review commission in place, and its recommendations led to the Student Opportunity Act. The difficulty was the Student Opportunity Act really, and the implementation of it, really only looked at highly urbanized communities, number one, and number two, it did not look at a community's ability to pay for education in the way that it should. So we have been trying to reconstitute another Foundation Budget Review Commission. I amended the Student Opportunity Act so that it must happen every 10 years. And we're now approaching that 10 years, but we're also nearing the end, as I mentioned, of implementation of the Student Opportunity Act. So the critical thing is what's going to happen when it's fully phased in? Because we've been increasing at a pretty substantial rate every year our investment in education based on the SOA. So the question is, what happens when it's fully implemented? And that's why we've been trying to get the new Foundation Budget Review Commission. Now, we didn't get it entirely, but I worked with the chair of the Education Committee in the Senate, Senator Jason Lewis, and we actually have a study going on right now about local contribution to estimate why a lot of communities' ability to pay is being overestimated. And that's a work in progress. So that may offer us a little bit of hope, because as you know, when we measure your ability to pay, and then we measure net school spending, minimum school spending, the gap is what you get in state aid. So if we can get it right around local contribution, there may be some hope there, number one. Number two, there is a lot of discussion on Beacon Hill right now about what we can do to help with special education. Every single school committee that I talk to raises it as the principal issue in terms of cost. No solutions yet, but there's a lot of discussion, and I can get into that in a little bit more detail if you like. So with regard to what we're spending, it has been increasing significantly. It runs through a formula, which doesn't always help a lot of communities, and we're nearing the time where that's going to have to be revisited. And that was a lot, so I apologize.
Just, the rising cost of insurance, health.
Absolutely.
All those things contribute, because those costs are far exceeding what, the funds are available. So I just feel like any change that needs to be implemented takes a long time.
It does.
And is there anything that we could, I'll just use the Federal Tax Relief Act as an example, that would allow people to take a tax deduction per child and allocate it towards education, whether it's public or private. And I know it hasn't been adopted by the state, and I know it may never be adopted by the state. And, we actually met with the MTA to discuss with them what their appetite is for that, and they're kind of running up the flagpole. But even on a state level, if they didn't want to adopt the federal tax, why couldn't they come up with a state implemented version of it, right? Which would give relief on state income tax. I mean, that give us, but then it comes down to who's the governing body that's going to distribute those funds, right? And who's going to monitor those funds, right? To make sure that they get to the school systems they need to go to. Yeah. And so there are things that I think that could be done, because if we wait around for the change, overrides are not going to pass, and people are going to lose their jobs, and level service is going to go away. And it's not just here in Middleton, it's throughout the state. And so I think it's catastrophic. I think I think there are funds available. I know there was, I used the layman's term of the millionaire's tax, where there's $2.18 billion available that's supposed to be earmarked for education and also for transportation. So money's going to the MBTA. From what I understand, money's allocated also to higher education community colleges, which I think is great. But why aren't any of those funds being released to the communities? Because in my opinion, it's money they're really stealing from the children and from communities that could be given. And I think that they're not, is that something that can be discussed at the state level, why those funds aren't being allocated in terms of, I don't want to say emergency money, but there's a lot of money available. And, it does affect our children's education. It affects people's jobs. And I think it's the right of a child to get an education in this state. I think Massachusetts led the charge with public education. And I don't understand why those funds aren't being made available, and how could we voice that to the state?
So, a couple of things. That's a lot. Number one, in Massachusetts, it's not just a concept. It's actually in the Constitution that every student has the right to an education. And a lot of the litigation that's occurred over the years relative to adequate school funding has been based on that constitutional guarantee.
Yeah.
Happened in 1978. Happened in 1993, happened again recently in the early 2000s. So that's an absolute. With regard to the funding from the surtax on incomes over $1 million,
Yeah.
it does, the first year it generated about $2 billion, and then it's been overperforming since then.
Yeah.
To the extent that last fiscal year, it generated almost $3 billion, and the coming fiscal year, we estimate that it'll probably be about $2.5 billion, but that's a number that's subject to change.
Sure.
As you know, the ballot question requires the money to be spent for education and transportation, but it also requires that that money not be used to supplant existing spending. So that you can't, for instance, reduce Chapter 70 and backfill it with the surtax. And that was done intentionally so that the overall impact would be an increase in total spending rather than just a shifting of total spending. With regard to how it gets spent, it's appropriated by the legislature. All of the money that's collected from the surtax goes into a fund that is restricted to those purposes. And with regard to where it goes, those are policy decisions. And, you know, the transportation part of it, we try to roughly be 50-50, but it hasn't always been that way. But education has gotten a lot of it. Free school meals, for instance, would not be possible right now without that surtax income. There was also money used to backfill special education, even though I just mentioned we're not supposed to backfill, but there was money to be used to assist with special education. So some of it is going to K through 12 education. But the question is, what's the right allocation? A lot of the money is being consumed to be able to offer free community college, which was an objective held as a very high priority for many of the members. But when we appropriate those funds every year, there's certainly a role for everyone to play in terms of advocating where it might go.
Yeah.
What I have often said to my colleagues, publicly and privately, is that we should not think about new initiatives until we can meet our existing commitments. And I point to the costs that we have with regard to Chapter 70 and special education as existing commitments. And those, I think, should be prioritized.
I agree.
I just had one comment I wanted to make about Chapter 70. Thank you for being here first.
You're welcome.
So you said up until this point, Chapter 70 funding as a whole is at about $7.5 million. Billion,
Yep.
yes. So, and Steve, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just reading our ClearGov draft of the budget, and it looks like Middleton's share of that 7.5 billion was $50,000. Is that correct?
No, that would be the amount of the increase.
You're right, that's not 50,000 total, no.
Okay, so what is Middleton Elementary School share of that?
I'll pull it up exactly, but it's more like 1.9-ish.
1.9.
Yeah, 1.9 million.
But the
Right.
increase is a small year.
Yeah, the increases are, you're correct,
Yeah.
the increases are small.
Okay.
Right,
I like to put everything in real numbers so everybody can get an understanding of what's going on. So with this kind of revisit to Chapter 70 and kind of reallocating, what do you envision will happen specific to Middleton, or is that kind of too broad of a question?
It's a little early to talk about that,
Okay.
but my hope is that we are going to start to see, let me use the word fairer treatment for suburban school districts. One of the things that we did in the Student Opportunity Act, I mentioned that we looked a lot at urbanized school districts, but one of the things we did for all school districts, and one of the things that was requested by suburban school districts, and I always give credit, and Scott knows this, I say it every chance I get, one of the changes in the SOA was led by the North Shore Superintendent's Roundtable. It is directly attributable to their efforts, because we asked them, why is it that costs are going up and student enrollment's going down? And their answer was, we have a very complex population, and there are a lot of outplacements, and the cost of those outplacements is driving school budgets up, not only tuition, but also transportation. So by working with them, in this region particularly, we amended the SOA to make sure that transportation, sped transportation, could be included in the circuit breaker. And that was a victory. It was a major victory. But outside of that, there wasn't much else, in my humble opinion. That's why when we revisit this again, I think we have to come back and do the second piece of the job, which is to look at the problem that I described, of that delta between decreasing enrollment and increasing cost, and see if there's a way that we could get at it. Here's one way we might get at it. One of the things about the circuit breaker, as you know, is that it only reimburses for students that reach a very high threshold, roughly 4 times the foundation budget for a student. The difficulty with that is it means that we're only providing you with assistance, generally speaking, if a student gets outplaced. But what if you build capacity in the local school to be able to deal with a student who's on the spectrum, the autism spectrum? Or what if you deal with a student that has dyslexia in a particular way that requires resources but keeps that student in the local school? We provide no assistance for that. One way that we could begin to get at this that doesn't depend on Chapter 70 would be to provide additional assistance for students that don't reach that threshold of 4 times the foundation budget. That's an idea that's being actively discussed. The problem with Chapter 70 is that if you put 200 legislators in a room and say, how do we change it, you're going to get 205 opinions. And so trying to wrangle that is difficult. We did it a little bit with the Student Opportunity Act, but we would need to do it again in a substantial way to come to the aid of Boxford, Middleton, Topsfield, and other communities like these.
Yeah, I think that's, Michelle's getting at, I think it touches upon, Senator Tar, what you were just saying, like, when you see that trend line go from 20 to 25, a $2 billion increase across the state, the smaller communities don't see that
Exactly.
level of increase, right?
Exactly.
It's, I think our Chapter 70 goes up, X amount, small
Right,
amounts
when
per
we
year.
talk about that $40,000-$50,000 range.
Right,
It's-
and then like the SOA, for us, that was about $30 a student. I think then it went to like $60
Yeah,
a student, right?
yeah.
It's money.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be changing money, right? It's not that kind of a thing. And then the regional transportation, that's another one that was happening at the state level. We're not eligible for regional transportation. It's Topsfield, Middleton's Middleton, Boxford's Boxford. So we pay our full freight of our transportation. So there were just certain programs that we don't, necessarily have access to as a unique kind of setup as a school union, so to speak,
Yeah.
as opposed to a regional or a standalone district. But, Matt, I'd love to hear your quick thought on what Senator Tar just said about special ed, because we've been trying to we work very hard to keep our kids in district, and we build programming, as Matt's our director of special education, and, hearing that, I think, is something that could be very helpful.
Yeah, I think the point is a good one about the foundation budget, because in the years that I've been doing this, the 4 times foundation has gradually increased and increased and increased over the years. And so what happens is, as you stated, is as you build capacity in district, so just as a brief, I know we talk about this, but the reimbursement for circuit breaker is about 75% on anything above the foundation budget, right? So if the foundation budget, I think this year is coming in over $50,000, $53,000, it has to be a student, to Senator Starr's comment, that typically is not in our district anymore, because unless a student has maybe a one-to-one nurse or other really significant technology needs or anything, you can't get to that level of cost for an in-district student, all while we're trying to build capacity and keep our students here for what ends up being a more reasonable cost if we can offset it with the right amount of students. So we could be building on this programming and have a student's overall cost be $50,000, but kept them in district, and we get no circuit breaker back from that, right? So it would be, to me, that I had not heard that before. That would be a very interesting
Agreed.
conversation to have, even if it was 3 times foundation gets you 50% reimbursement, right? Even if it was some sort of, doesn't have to be the full circuit breaker reimbursement, but that could be a real game changer for us as a tri-town, because we are building capacity as much as we can
Good.
to keep students in, and so we are leveraging even partnership programs to come in and utilize our kind of 3-town system to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So that would be something that I do think would be, could have a real impact on our.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question? On the circuit breaker, is it 100% reimbursement when you reach that higher level? It's not, it's
75%, so 75% of the difference.
75%.
At this point, I mean, it's up to 75%. We never
75%.
know, it's up to 75%.
So if the tuition is 80,
so-
Yep.
4 times foundation is 50,
Yep.
we'll get 75% of that
75%.
30 the following year.
And that's the other difficult part of circuit breaker, which is understood, but it's always, and it's what caught, Middleton is actually in a very interesting spot this year with the budget when it comes to tuitions, because we had several high-cost situations that will no longer be in the FY27 budget, that are in the FY26 budget. So the out-of-district costs are actually going down, and because of the amount of circuit breaker that's gonna come in because of high-cost students in FY26, there'll be a lot of circuit breaker money coming in next year as well. So it looks a little odd on the budget side of things for FY27, but it is often very difficult also to plan that offset for the following year, because the district pays for the cost 100%,
Yeah.
and then gets that money back the following year. So it's not a direct one-to-one for that. It is for that student, but, and it's not sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because it's going towards, but we kind of worked that out. But the conversation of, I think is a really good one, of we know it's right for kids to develop as much program as we can, right? So educationally first, we know it's right by kids, and then second, the cost aspect of it is, typically if we can build a program with capacity, then the cost would be less, but we do not get any reimbursement for that. So that would be a very interesting thing to see move forward.
So, one of the things that's interesting about this is that I think there's general consensus that inclusion is the preferred way to treat these students as long as we can meet their needs. But yet, the state preaches inclusion, but doesn't provide you with any assistance to execute inclusion. Another thing that we've discussed, and I've offered this bill in many legislative sessions and it hasn't passed thus far, would be to change the threshold so that an in-placed student would only be required to hit 3 times foundation budget, and an outplaced student would be at 4 times. Again, it hasn't happened yet, but that's an active conversation that we're having.
Great.
Matt will vote for it, it's not, it'll help you, but
Say
I'll vote for it.
yes.
Yeah. Does that help you?
Why isn't there an appetite for that? Has there been it's not getting voted in? What is it sounds like everyone would be on board with something like that, so what's the pushback?
Well, not necessarily, because everything has a constituency. And there are a lot of Chapter 766 schools that believe that that would be an unfair distinction, so that they need to be properly funded, and of course no one disagrees with that, but they would argue that drawing the distinction between in-placed and outplaced would be unfair to the services that they provide. But I think the more important point, and it's a very good question, is much of what I'll describe to you tonight seems like common sense and seems logical, but trying to change any of this is incredibly difficult. And, you ask, Scott, what groups like this can do, like the Tri-Town Union. What you can do is try to work with other communities to try to find some common denominators, right? And that's why a lot of us have begun to work on, again, things that aren't directly related to Chapter 70, but that everyone benefits from. So when we change circuit breaker and we increase funding, it doesn't matter where you are in Massachusetts, that will help you. And I know it doesn't apply to the communities in the union, at least the elementaries, but when we do an increase to regional school transportation, that helps everybody without going through Chapter 70. So there's really a couple of different paths, and one is that, we need to continue to try to modify Chapter 70 because it is the backbone of educational funding in Massachusetts. But while we do that, we need to pursue these other avenues as well to try to help every community as opposed to just a few. And I'm sure if you look at the numbers, the school districts that are getting the major benefit from the Student Opportunity Act, I would suggest to you there's probably not 50 of them.
I would agree with that.
And in fact, I think the number probably would be
30.
many few, more like 20 to 30, right? And so you have all of these school districts out there that are only getting minimum per pupil aid. In fact, there's an organization that was started over the last couple of years, and it used to be called the 211 or something along those lines, because there were actually 211 school districts only getting minimum per pupil aid as of that time. That number is now closer to 250 school districts. And so there's a growing movement from those communities to say all we get from the state is minimum per pupil aid. and they want to change it. And that's, again, something that you could, I think, join the effort and support that, because there is commonality in all of those communities. Those are the ones you're describing that are all across the state.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we haven't been able to make a significant change yet, but I'm optimistic that we might be able to with that kind of an effort.
Last year, the whole school committee supported the override at town meeting, and we discussed that. But what I'm hearing in the community is people are upset that the audit never happened that was voted in. And people are they don't have an appetite for any more overrides or any more increases until the audit's done. Where does that stand right now? Where do you stand with that?
So my opinion is this: 72% of the people of Massachusetts voted for a legislative audit, and I think it should proceed. What I do think is that some of my colleagues have raised issues, and these are good faith beliefs, that the audit, as the auditor has proposed it, would be unconstitutional because of issues of separation of powers, issues of ethics. And my opinion is this: if those issues remain, we should go to the Supreme Judicial Court, we should have the case tried, and we should have a decision. Because ultimately, anything short of an SJC decision is an opinion. The SJC has the authority to clarify whether or not conducting that audit would be unconstitutional. And I think we should go to court as quickly as we can, we should frame the issues, and we should get an answer. And that's an opinion that I've shared with the auditor and many others. And you may recall that the Senate had created a subcommittee of the Senate Rules Committee to actually look at what those questions should be. So far, the list has not been produced. But I understand the issue of faith in government. When you pass something, and I'll give you another example. The voters of this Commonwealth voted to have a 5% rate of income tax, and how many years did it take to get there? When you do things like that, it does not promote public trust. And that's what's happening with the audit right now. So if there are questions, let's get them on the table, and let's go to court, and let's get them addressed.
That's what I'm hearing in the community, is a lack of trust, and people are upset, and they don't want to move on overrides, but they also, we're talking going below level for the first time in 20 years, approximately 20 years.
I mean, I've been here 10, so yeah.
And this is, a lot of people are upset about that. They're losing faith along the way, and they don't understand the process, and that's the feedback that we're getting.
Understood. Well, your point about the audit is well taken. But that being said, again, I realize it's a difficult situation. The flip side of the coin is there are a lot of folks that are concerned about their property taxes displacing them from being able to live in the community. And that's why I think the Commonwealth needs to do more with a basic thing like education, which is one of the most important things that government does. It's performed generally at the local level, but it's supported with state resources, and those state resources need to be allocated more fairly.
What's the general vibe on the Chapter 70 Review Commission? They went all around the state, the Governor's Council, they collected feedback, they collected data, school committee submitted letters, the North Shore Roundtable submitted a big long letter. Do we think change will come of that?
I do. I can't predict what change will
Okay.
be at this point, but the scenario that I've been trying to orchestrate, again, not just me, but with my colleagues, is that by the time the SOA is fully implemented, that the next phase will be based on the recommendations of that commission.
Okay.
But the other difficult part of it is, and this is something that I cannot give you a good rationale for, we did not get a full Foundation Budget Review Commission. We only got one that looked at local contribution. An important part of it, but my original amendment
Sure.
called for the whole thing. But my hope is that in the next couple of years, by the time we fully implement SOA, then that will be the next chapter, and that will be what we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing we talk about all the time is if only 5 people in the state can explain the Chapter 70 formula, it's probably not a very good formula.
Absolutely.
'Cause I've been in education 32 years. I wouldn't be able to sit here and get to write down. I could give you the 30,000-foot view. I wouldn't be able to explain it in full detail.
Absolutely.
It's so complicated.
And there are a number of things like the inflation factor we know does not properly account for inflation. The factor for healthcare does not properly account for the cost of that. So we know that there are a lot of issues, and I agree with you. Trying to simplify it would be even more difficult than trying to reform it.
right.
But the point is, we can't lose sight of that, because for the foreseeable future, it is going to be
Right.
the backbone of educational funding. And again, we're spending $7 billion through that formula.
And it feels like there'll be one bite at that apple, because when the Chapter 70 formula was created, was it 30 years ago?
93.
Okay, it's been that forever. So the next one will be the next 30 years. It's not like 5 years later it'll be like, hey, let's look at this again and redo it completely. We might nip around the edges.
Yeah, yeah.
But the foundation part of it that comes together, like, that's why that's so important, as you know.
Well, I would make a couple points. One is, it took way too long to review it the first time, and while we weren't reviewing it, the disparity between what the formula said was the cost of educating a student and what was actually the cost of educating a student got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But number two, once we did get a commission in place, again, roughly 2015, we did get a change, and that was the Student Opportunity Act.
Right.
Now, by virtue of the amendment that I added, we're going to review it every 10 years at a minimum, and we will get some change. The question is, how much change will we get? Because it got very far off of where it should have been, because it wasn't reviewed for all those years.
I think there should be some guardrails on it, on how long it's revisited.
Yeah.
Whether it's 3 years, 5 years, like you said, 10 years. I think 10 years is too long.
I wanted 5,
Yeah.
but sometimes in the legislature, you have to negotiate.
Yeah. So I have a question. As a school committee member, a parent, a community member, what could we do to go to the state to implement change? I mean, it's great, there's discussions. I mean, I went to the DESE conference to listen to people's, what can we do to implement some type of change, or to voice what our frustrations are to implement change? Because we can sit here and it's great, and I know you're working hard, and I heard you said we can go to other communities and find commonality, right, on things that would benefit all of us. That's fine, but if we found those commonalities and we, bang our drum, if you will, what should we be asking for? What should we be doing? Like, what should we be attacking?
So, number one, in a political spectrum like this, it's always a question of numbers. So trying to have as many numbers as you can is important. Number two, trying to have some degree of consensus around what it is that you'd like to prioritize. Number three, the Ways and Means Committee will have hearings leading up to the development of the next budget, as they have always done. You can participate in that. And number four, I would think with the expertise that's obviously around this table, there'd be an opportunity to think about what are the real pinch points, like what is it that would really make a difference, and make sure that we understand that. Because a lot of us spend a lot of time on this, but nobody has a monopoly on wisdom. So spending some time and saying, here's what we could do. We just had a very good discussion about SPED. I think that change would make a substantial difference for these communities and communities all across the state. Are there other things that would make a similar difference? Understanding that, because we're not going to get an endless list, right? As Dr. Morrison was saying, we're going to get another bite at this very soon, but it's not going to come again. So we've got to make sure we're absolutely focused on what it is that we want to change.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jackie, any questions?
No, I think actually, Dave, you just asked my main question, which is what can we do, so I appreciate that. Sorry, that's why I'm home. And I think in brainstorming, like, what can we do? I have some ideas, and we'll probably talk with Matt and share some ideas from a special education perspective. And I think also one point that I just would want to share with you and ask you to bring back to your colleagues, and I mentioned this at the Chapter 70 listening session, is most of what we just talked about is special education related, special education students. And I would ask that we are really, really careful with how we talk about that. And so that it doesn't become that those students are a burden, because that's often what it comes across as, unintentionally, fully unintentionally. And people who do not understand and who are not living it don't know, and they don't get it. and they just see it as a really big expense. So I would just ask that you take that back to your colleagues and make sure that when those discussions are being had, that the essence of the way that special education students are discussed is handled very carefully.
It's a point well taken, and one that I try to stress a lot. We owe educational opportunity to every student, and we have an obligation to maximize the potential of every student. But your point is well taken.
But I also appreciate you coming out, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I really appreciate it.
Well, by listening to the cough, I'm glad that you didn't. But I appreciate your being able to be with us remotely, and I would say I'm always happy to have these conversations, whether they be in this setting or in a smaller working group. Always happy to talk about it. I've spent a lot of time on this issue. It's very important to me.
I know it is.
And so, I'm happy to talk about new ways to approach it. I mean, poor Costa has listened to me speak about these issues probably for at least 20 years, and he's patient enough to sit here and listen to me again tonight. But I'm not giving up. And so happy to keep talking about it till we were able to crack this a little bit and make it a little bit better. And I would make the point, we talked about minimum aid. Minimum aid is one of the ways that we were able to help without adjusting Chapter 70. And we went from $30 to roughly $104, but it still didn't change your numbers that much, right? And that's one of the frustrating things.
But I feel like the homework, when you ask, like, what can we do? And I think maybe the homework for all of us hearing Senator Tar talk is, right, Chapter 70 is going to be the spine of this thing, right? The foundation, the backbone. But then what are those common areas that we can, special ed, transportation, I think us trying to brainstorm with other committees, like, what are the other areas that we could maybe find some commonalities, that maybe it's an easier path to get money to those things that would help alleviate the burden. So if we do 5% alleviations, 5 times, great, we just got a 20% increase, 25% increase, right? Like, so I think that's some of the homework that I think we can work on our end.
Same areas that all burden each community.
Yes.
Insurance, special
Yeah,
education.
insurance is a good one.
Transportation.
Good one.
Those are the things that are all
Yeah.
burdening every community. That's the commonality.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've heard about in the recent past is the issue of transportation, and if it's contracted transportation, there aren't many vendors, and so there's not a lot of price competition. I've got some ideas on how we might address that. And again, I think it's important to know that you are represented by a number of legislators who are very committed, and we work together, and we're happy to talk with you, happy to advance those solutions. That is the way that we got sped transportation included in the SOA.
Thank you very much.
My
Does
pleasure.
anyone have any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's continue the conversation, and happy to work with you.
Thank you.
And again, always happy to come to a meeting where there's a dog present. It's very, very impressive.
We appreciate the partnership as always.
My pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm told we're going to get snow tonight, but no more than an inch.
All right, so there'll be school tomorrow.
Well, that's going to be up to you.
That'll be school tomorrow.
For those of you that are watching at
Yeah,
home.
there's school tomorrow. Exactly. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take
Bruce.
care.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Good
night.
to see you very much.
All right.
We left off.
Yeah, we were with Steve. Steve, we were with you around transportation. Did you have any other questions on that? Michelle had asked a question. I think you said there 65 is the kind of the good number.
Right.
So anything else on that?
I have nothing else unless the committee has questions.
Great.
No. So, report from the principals.
Yeah. December was a fast month, so I will be quick and then yield my time back to the body.
There you go.
We did have a very successful book fair the week of December 8th up in our library. We also had the geography game show made a return. It's not much of a game show, though. He just draws a map and talks about the founding of America and the Massachusetts Bay Colony and that kind of thing, but he actually freehands the entire map, which is, we have them hanging in the school. There's probably one here too, right? They're pretty impressive, but, and that's about it for December. Went quick.
Full of Metal, we had a pretty exciting month. In December, grade 1 students enjoyed an in-house field trip from the Discovery Museum. Grade 2 students took a field trip to the Stoneham Theater, followed by the Geo Game Show. The entire school came together for the holiday laser light show. The PTO put on and Full of Metal hosted the holiday bazaar. And we also welcomed Middleton Taekwondo, where each grade got to take a little bit of a lesson on Taekwondo. And we finished the month with an all-school assembly where we did some holiday cheer, and we had the staff did their festival sweater walk up and down on the red carpet, and we sang some songs, and the kids went on their way.
Thank you. Do we have any gifts and grants?
None from me. Jeff, Mike, anything? I know it was a short month last month, and we accepted the gift from the Rotary, so we're good with that.
We're looking at the NESDEC enrollment projections.
Great. So in the drive for the committee every year, around this time of year, you'll see a folder that reads NESDEC info. So I take the information from the NESDEC document, which can be a lot to read, and I just try to put it into a PDF. So in that file, a folder rather, you'll see another folder that says last year's file. So you'll see the 24 enrollment thing from NESDEC, just to have that as a backup. And then you'll see the PDF of the 25. If you click on the PowerPoint that says 2025 NESDEC M is for Middleton, because I did the same thing for Boxford and Topsfield. So if you click on that, I just want to highlight for you some things from the enrollment report. And this will help to queue up our conversation around budget and a path forward as it relates to budget as well. So slide 1 is just the cover slide. So if you go to slide 2, NESDEC always gives an enrollment summary in there, and I put a little red box around the important part. So the NESDEC enrollment projection fell within 16 students of the K-6 total, 649 students projected versus 633 enrolled. A variance of 14 students occurred at kindergarten, 77 projected versus 63 enrolled, and ratios have been adjusted. That was something we talked about last year when we talked about the kindergarten enrollment, because they continue to project higher numbers in kindergarten, and the reality, it appears, at least in the moment and in the moment looking ahead for next year, does not seem to match that, and that's something we'll talk about as we get into budget discussion. Births increased from a previous 10-year average of 61 to a projected average of 64. And then they're projecting over the next 3 years, K-12 enrollment will increase by about 29 students. They project 3 to 6 enrollment will decrease by 62 students as students move through the grades, and then we have that outage in 6th grade. So that's the sort of projection, plus 29 minus 62 ultimately ends up being, a minus, so to speak. If you go to the next one, it gives the last 10-year look of enrollment. So if you go back to 15-16, 646 kids, and then you can see 624, 606, 621, 638. You have the COVID year in there, where you see that little dip, and then 656, 669, 674, 672. We're on a little bit of an upward swing, and then 633 this year. If you go to the next one, it gives you the next 10 years and what they're projecting. And so the projections go, you'll start to see some 5s show up on the box here. 633 this year, and then they go to 641 in 26-27, and then 635, 600, 582, 575, 585. I think that's those low kindergartens who are starting to see when you see those 5s coming into play. 605, 586, 576, and 593. And what I did on the next slide for you is I took the numbers that I just read to you, right? So this is the 25-26 NESDEC report of the next 10 years. And then below it, I put what they were projecting in last year's report, right, to kind of show you the differential. So when we sat here a year ago, they were saying you'll have 649 kids this school year. Well, we have 633. Last year when we sat here, they said in the 26-27 school year, you'll have 671 kids. This year, they're projecting 641. And you can see that trend continue out 9 years, because we don't have the projections out to the 10th year for the 24-25 year, because obviously that would end at the 34-35 year. But you can see that their projections from last year, they've all been kind of notched down. So if you look at the blue number first and then look up the green graph, you'll see their new projection that's in there. So then that got me thinking, let me pull the NESDEC report from 20. I just picked 5 years ago completely randomly, more than anything else. I just wanted to do like a 5-year look back. So if you go to the next slide, I have it sort of tilted to show that it's from 2020. The projections in 2020 would have gone from 2020 to 2030, right? And you see 8s on that number, right? And I remember having these conversations 5 years ago. We were saying, well, okay, look at this. They're saying in 24 we're going to have 815 kids. In 25 we're going to have 823 kids. Well, we have 633 kids. In 26 we're going to have 844 kids. In 27 we're going to have 847 kids. If you scroll back up to the previous slide, you'll see, like, let's take the high water mark. Back in 2020, they were saying we'd have 847 kids in 2027. Last year, they said that we would have 677 kids in 2027. And this year, they're saying we'll have 635 kids in 2027. So you can see that it's gone from a 847 projection 5 years ago to a projection now, only 2 years away, the 27-28 school year, to being 635, right? And that's happening. I'm seeing that, like, in Boxford. We were really panicking 5 years ago because there were 4-digit numbers on the screen for 2020. They were talking about 1,000 kids, 1,085 kids, and we were going, where are these kids going to come from and where are we going to put them? Because that's obviously a huge number, and those are now scaled way back as well. So I've actually sent an email to NESDEC to have this exact conversation with them, because in 5 years' time, that's a lot, right? We want to be able to plan and prepare and think about the future and make sure we future-proof the system to make sure we're not, shortchanging our kids in any way, shape, or form. And we use these projections to help, guide this and guide our actions and decisions that we make. So we've pinged them. I want to speak to their demographer, because 5 years ago wasn't that long of a time ago. And where they were at 847 5 years ago, and now this year they're saying, again, in 2 years, 27, we'll have 635 kids. Does that all make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. I know it was a lot. So you can skip that 2020 slide because we just did that. Then they give you the line graph of, like, historical versus projected, and it just shows, a little bit of an up and down line. It's not a stock that's doing this. It's more of a wave that's going up and down. They then give you the birth to kindergarten relationship, and so it's always 5 years out. So if you go to the very end of that, on the bottom there, in 2020, there were 54 births, and we're seeing 63 kindergarten kids. And so that's an interesting factor, right? The year before, in 19, there were 54 births, but we ended up with 77 kindergartners. The year before that, in 2018, there were 69 births, but we ended up with 88 kindergartners. In 17, there were 64 births, but we ended up with 105 kindergartners in the 22-23 school year, 5 years later. So that's obviously a little bit of a tough prediction and challenge, and that'll bear out today when we talk a little bit about what they're projecting for kindergarten versus what our current census is showing. And then the final two slides, this one is the projected enrollment slide at the top, and it's a whole lot of data. You just need to look at the box that I drew the red arrow to on the right, and it shows you those numbers again that were just in that bar graph, right? 633 kids this year, and then they're saying 641, 635, 600, and then you start to get a string of fives, high fives, for many, many years. But their overall prediction is about a change of 40 over the next 10 years, down 40 over the next 10 years. If you go to the next slide, in 24-25, they were predicting a change of 43 kids down over 10 years. And now they're at 40 kids over the next 10 years. So it's, continues to show a little bit of a decrease for sure. You think about sections, 40 kids, that could be 2-3 sections when you think about it in those sort of conversations. So that's the last slide on that table. But that's sort of the NESDEC overview in a nutshell. And if you back out of that and go back to the drive, you'll see that PDF is basically everything I just shared with you. There's even more information in the PDF. I tried to pull out the real relevant information. And if you're interested in comparing it, particularly if you're newer to the committee and you want to see, like, what did the 24 NESDEC document look like, I put the 24 NESDEC document in there as well for the committee to be aware of. And again, we always try to do that ahead of budget discussion, just to kind of give you that sense of where things are heading with enrollment. So any questions, thoughts, comments on any of that?
I should have a quick question.
Yeah, of course.
You reached out to NESDEC. Is that these numbers unique to, like, our geographic area, where they're, like, are they more accurate, say, like in Malden and Medford, as opposed to, like, Middleton, Topsfield, and
Yeah,
Boxford?
that's a question I'll definitely ask Dave. Like, I can only compare it to our two others, right? I can only compare it to Boxford and Topsfield, and I'm seeing that, again, the 4-digit numbers in Boxford, and, it's at like 600 or 700, you're talking 300 kids off, right? So I want to know why. Like, why? I understand anything after 3 years is a forecast, not a projection, right? It's like, you might as well just throw darts at that point. But even within that 3-year time frame, again, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but I think they were showing 98 for kindergarten for next school year. And census is what right now?
65.
65. In reality, I think we currently have 45 enrolled, is that right? Do we have packets in hand?
No.
Okay, so 65 on the census and 98. It's a big difference, right? A big difference. So those are the questions I have for them. And I'll ask them that question, though, like, are you getting calls from the Malden superintendent, the Melrose superintendent, saying, why are these
Maybe
numbers?
maybe the formula is more accurate in certain areas
Right.
than to like a regional.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fair question for sure. Any other thoughts on that from the team? All right, if it's okay with the chair, send it over to Mr. Greenberg to kick us off on some budget discussion for FY '27 and to take us through some information.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. All right, everyone, good evening again. If you wouldn't mind.
Steve, I'm just going to send this down to you so Jackie can hear you. So Jackie, I'm going to pass the speakerphone down, and then when we start, oh, hold on, you're on this. Keep going. Jackie, I might have to call you back.
So, in the drive,
Sorry,
everyone,
can you hear
will-
me? All right, great. Can you pass that down? Sure. Thanks. Sorry, Steve.
No, that's all right. We'll just wait for Jackie to get over here.
Yeah. Jackie, cough on him a lot. He's a germ freak.
I'm not a germ freak, but I'm not a good sick person. In the drive, you'll see a Google Sheet that we shared with everyone. It's called the MSC Meeting Document 121925. And I'm going to walk you through that document and go over the numbers. There'll be recommendations that we'll ask the committee to take action on. This is also the opportunity for the committee to ask the directors and the principals questions about the impact of these recommendations that we'll be talking about. And as we go through this and go through all the information, I want to stress to everybody that while the specific things we'll say we recommend you take action on, this is not the be-all, end-all, okay? This is the first discussion, and that we have more discussions that are going to take place in February and in March. So even though we're making recommendations for the committee to take action, and the committee may take action to do so, you can always adjust as we go forward, all right? So with that, I'm just going to start walking you through this document, if that's okay with everybody. So if we start at the top, we start with the budget calculation. All right, how do we get to the guideline? And as you can see, and you've heard me say before, the approved local appropriation for FY '26 is the $16,725,396. With the 2.5% guideline, that's an additional $418,135. That gives us the guideline budget of $17,143,531. So the budget that we presented to the committee back in December is that guideline budget. As we continue down, give you more additional information, the actions that we'll be asking you to take, place those the adjustments we're talking about. So where do we, we got a gap we've got to close, and so now we're going to make these adjustments to close that gap. Does that make sense for everybody? All right. So as we continue and we look at this document, you'll see that right now our budget gap is $774,313. And in the original draft of the budget, we placed that gap to get to the guideline budget, 600 of it in salaries, so much in supplies, so much in facilities to get it down. Now we're going to be making specific recommendations to you to place it in specific areas. Things that we want the committee to keep in mind, that when we developed the FY '27 budget, that we used certain criteria to develop consumable lines or non-salary lines. Specifically, when we talk about consumable lines, we used FY '25 actuals and added a 3% inflation factor, okay? Professional development, we looked at actuals, and then we said, okay, we'll be level funding and along those lines. Again, to get to this guideline budget. Now, what's important when we talk about consumables, just for the committee to keep in mind, that when you are talking about developing the budget based on 25 actuals. When those 25 actuals or those budget numbers were developed, they were developed back in '23. So, you know, you still have this 2-year gap, even though you're throwing a 3% inflation factor. So you still have an inflationary factor gap as we go forward, right? But it's not like, oh, woe is me. It's just another thing to keep in mind as we continue our discussions in February and in March. So as we're looking at things and the committee wants to possibly take additional action one way or the other, you have additional information as to how we got these numbers and how we're bringing them to the committee. All right? Are there any questions about anything I've communicated so far?
And that's at line 16, 17, and 18.
Yes, sir.
This captures what Steve was just talking about, in that, you know, by taking an FY '25 actual that was really developed in '23, because that's when those conversations would have started, for the FY '27 budget, he had to already reduce supplies and consumables by $114,000 going in. He already had to reduce professional development by $80,000 going in, and he reduced facility lines by $23,000 going in. And the reason for that is because, again, he looked at 25 actuals and said, I'm going to add a 3% to it, and even in doing that, that's the difference, right? And so it's a moment in time capture more than anything else, right? It doesn't mean that we overspent that year or underspent that year. There's a lot of variations that go into it, but I just think those are important points. Like, just as a start, we were already coming into you, let's say, down from a level service budget. Is that a fair way to say it?
That's very fair and very accurate. Questions?
Could you give us examples, like for professional development, that the reduction there, like what won't we see next year in?
So that will be a question for the director, you know, so Peggy can answer that, what you won't see. Because when the budget is developed, and because of, we had a very compressed schedule, and that we also developed a budget based upon meeting the guideline, that those discussions, we're not having discussions about what it will be specifically. It becomes a 180. What it becomes is, this is what you have to work with. Now, make it work. All right, so it's not, I know that may not come across very kind or nice, you know, but in part, this is what we're navigating through. And I have positives and negatives about it, but again, we can stop, and if you want to ask the directors those kinds of questions, you know, but here, it's important that it's objective, you know. This is what will or will not happen, or maybe will or will not happen, or maybe we will be able to find, another funding source. All right, we don't want to overreact to it, because I don't think that that's really fair.
It's allowing us to basically work on a baseline number, and then it still gives us the ability to make a decision on where those cuts happen throughout the process.
Right, so, yeah, so I think when we're doing this, and you're having this Q&A with the directors, you should be getting objective feedback about, okay, what does this mean? Then we're going to get into these numbers, and we will have recommendations that we've all worked on as a team for the committee to take, and they are the recommendations at this point in time. With that in mind, that you still, again, have discussions that you will have in February and in March, that we will be having discussions with Select Board and Finance Committee between now and March, that it will also be additional information as to what direction you want to go with the budget, whether it's putting something back in or taking something out.
Yeah, like you'll see tonight, when you look at this list, you know, we're looking at class sizes and we're looking at enrollment, and we're saying, like, we think that there's a couple of sections there that we can take and still have a manageable class size. You guys vote that tonight, all of a sudden 30 kids enroll in the next 2 months. We might be coming back to you in March and saying, you might not want to take 3. You might want to put 1 back in the budget, right? But that means something to an override discussion, Joe, right? Like, you know, what's the vibe out there for that, if that's a piece that people want or not? And so those are all the conversations that will evolve over time, but what we're bringing to you tonight is some recommendations that we think, as of right now, all things being equal on January 5th, if everything was frozen in time, and it's not, but everything was frozen in time tonight, we think that to try to get closer to that 2.5 guideline, these are some of the recommendations that we could make. But if it's okay with the chair, if Peggy just answers at a high level right now, that question from Michelle around professional development.
Sure.
I'm just trying to figure out how to summarize this. So the numbers that Steve was quoting in FY '20, those are accurate numbers from being the actuals that we spent out of the operating budget. We do at times have grant funding that we can use to offset costs, and we will charge it to grants before we charge it to the operating budget, because then the money could stay in the operating budget to assist with other costs or go back to the town at the end of the year. So if we look at that FY '25, what we actually spent out of that operating budget was $13,640, and then Steve did the 3%. But we supplemented that year with grant funding at $27,600, so our actual spending was $41,240. And so we're going into this next year with a recommendation of $14,419. Our grant funding for PD has been averaging more around $20,000, so that might bring us up to $34,000. That is a good, $10,000 below what we were spending in that year. We're already at $28,000 this year. We're only halfway through the year. So, we'd have to make hard decisions about what would go, but it definitely is not level service. We're looking at a drastic reduction. And the grant funding is not necessarily a guarantee, because those are based on federal funds, and there's been a lot of discussion at the federal level about that. They're talking about moving it out of the U.S. Department of Education to another agency. They're talking about potentially reducing those grants or eliminating those grants. It's hard to know what will actually happen, but that's why that number seems so low. But because we were offsetting with grants, and I just can't guarantee that grants will be there. So it's a lot of wait and see. We don't know about the grants until late July, unfortunately, which is well beyond our budget process. So we typically do put it in the operating budget, and then if we get the grant funding, we offset the operating budget. So that's kind of where we are right now. So we have plans to support various initiatives next year, and we just wouldn't be able to do it all. So we might not be able to do as much coaching around second-year implementation on interreading. We might not be able to do as much around some of the other content areas that we're looking to support. So I guess we're kind of waiting to see where the numbers land, and then we would have to make difficult decisions about what won't get funded.
Okay.
Thank you.
Through this process, to your point, Scott, about kind of revisiting different items as we get more actual numbers in, I would like to look at some of the things that were taken out of draft one of the budget, and if we could put more funds back in there, just kind of as this process is.
And that's exactly, having the committee lead that conversation is very important to us. So I think that's noted in the notes, and I think we remember that for our February meeting when we return. And, Steve's going to walk you through, when we did this, it's like section 1, awaiting data. We don't know yet. Mm-hmm. Section 2, you can see on that, and Steve will walk through this in a minute, monitoring enrollment. And then section 3, even leaner consumables in PD, right? Some more modest cuts there. But, to your point, Michelle, on section 1, I don't know, maybe does it come in at 17 as opposed to 18? That's at 2% there.
Right.
We picked up a few bucks. Now maybe in the February meeting, we're having a conversation around, we picked up a few bucks. Good for us. Where do we want to put those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we want to place those bets, so to speak? So it's okay to go back to Steve?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the directors, or we can do that as we go along, whatever works for the committee, of course?
I think we're good.
Okay, so we're gonna go through each of these sections, and I'll ask, we'll go over the parts, and then I'm gonna ask the committee for deliberation and votes. First section, we're calling awaiting data, and we're not recommending any action at this time for these two items. The two items we're talking about are associated with the insurance. Currently, the budget carries changing the insurance split from 66 to 68%, and it also is carrying a total premium increase of 20%. The two areas that we have thoughts on, but we will need to wait until we have the discussions with the select board and that we wait for the rates to come in, would be the value of 66 versus 68%. That's 68,467. But we're going to wait until we hear from select board and where they're at and where they want to go with the insurance split. And then if we had a decrease of 2% on the premium, that's worth another 40,000. But again, the recommendation is to hold on that until we know more information.
And that's we're carrying 20, and you would hope that it comes in at 18.
Correct.
Yeah.
We don't, so we don't know yet.
Right.
And we won't have some information, I don't believe, till mid-February, but
as soon as we know, then we can bring something back to the committee to discuss.
So we won't have that information till our last budget meeting, correct?
No,
Till March.
it'll be February, and when we say March, if we have to squeeze in another meeting, we'll squeeze in another meeting. But
great.
as soon as we know, we'll communicate it out, whether it's in the meeting or not. We can send out the email, like, this is where it's coming in at. And then you'll know, and then we'll prep it up for, we'll tee it up so that we can make that vote as quickly as possible. All right?
Great.
Other questions on that section? Okay. Next section would be Section 2, monitoring enrollment, and these are the areas that we are recommending the school committee takes action on. The first one would be reducing the library aid at $48,009. When we look at, again, the changes, you're going to hear me say this about all of this, that it's going to be focused on the shifts in enrollment. Okay, so when we look at the shifts in enrollment, that it is reasonable to reduce that position. And I'm sorry I jump around a lot, but when you go to the right, columns H, I, J, and K, and you're looking at the enrollment, and you see how we have kindergarten highlighted at 98, because that's the NESDEC number. If you change that to 65, your class size goes to 13. So you see that I just did that, right? So that we'll get into class size in a second. But first thing I'm asking the committee for a vote on, you okay?
Go through the whole section first.
Oh, okay.
Before we vote, Steve.
Okay, so library aid, reducing that would be $48,009. Okay. The next one would be reducing 2 paraprofessionals, and the value of that is $119,620. In terms of specifically where, to be determined, but again, as we sat down as a team, this made sense, all right? And that's the dollars for that. The next one would be reducing 3 classroom sections. Those sections would be to be determined, but again, looking at enrollment and right-sizing, that we'd still be able to stay in the realm of historical class size averages, when we also take into consideration retirements, that for the most part, the impact, not so bad. We still may have to lay someone off, but to be determined, all right? Because there could be a couple other things waiting in the wings we don't have official information on yet, so we don't want to say yay or nay when we don't have that in writing. So that's this, right now, the reasonably specific information about the classroom sections. And then the next one would be a 1.0 FTE ed support piece.
So as you look at the right there, as Steve had talked about HIJK, excuse me, this is in conversation with the principals, and hearing their feedback and looking at class sizes and looking at enrollment, as we talked about with NESDEC, right? We're seeing a decrease, and making sure that we have things, as Steve sort of said, right-sized, but still managing the historic, the past of how we have managed class sizes. And then that library aid piece, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, is in conjunction with, by reducing sections, we would not have a need necessarily for that position to cover a section.
Correct.
And then the paraprofessionals, as Steve said, all that would be TBD. Even the classroom sections would be TBD, because we would have our principals make those decisions at a later date once we have a better sense of enrollment, because we don't want to sit here today and say it's this grade, and then all of a sudden 30 more kids register at that grade. We leave that up to the buildings to administer that reduction.
So I'll stop there, sir, and if the committee would like to make a vote on this sections, in this information,
Or any questions?
or any questions.
I just want the public to kind of understand that, these really are based on enrollment, and
Correct.
the way I see the enrollment and the class sizes, if we reduce the amount of sections, we still have smaller
Right.
class sizes, so even though it's a reduction, it can still be, in my opinion, looked at as level service.
Yep.
Yeah, we've been saying right sizing.
Right,
Absolutely.
okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're just trying to be consistent with what the enrollment's telling us, right? When the enrollment's gone up, the committee has looked to add,
Yeah.
right? When the enrollment goes down, we want to make sure that we're right-sizing and delivering a product that's still a very good product in terms of
Yeah.
class size ratio.
And I think that you know, like the retirements that you mentioned, will kind of help things. You know, because you don't want anyone to lose their job, obviously.
No, of course not, no, but
I think it's a very conscientious approach to it, you know, with trying to take our classroom sizes historically, maintain level service. I think that, you know, these are tough decisions, but I think, you know, these decisions are definitely most sensitive, like some of the most sensitive changes we have to make, and I think it's done conscientiously. We don't
Yeah.
want the numbers and the retirement.
Yeah.
And I think the public should know that we care about, you know, retaining
Yeah.
our teachers and
Yeah.
still creating level service.
And like, as we've been saying through this whole meeting, we can go back to it and
Correct.
revisit it if
Yep.
something changes. If, you know, if we get 30 new students,
Yep.
you know, or something like that,
Yep.
we can revisit it.
absolutely, that's why we're saying, you know, we have the
Yep.
next couple months to revisit. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
And so it's early in the process, but it allows us as a team, if you guys decide to vote on these tonight, it allows us the opportunity to look and further refine things and come back next time and say, okay, we're heading in a direction here, we're closing a gap, we're continuing to meet with our colleagues on liaison team that we have and continue those conversations as well and see how things proceed from there.
Okay. I would be comfortable then on voting on the 4 of these then tonight. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
Each line, Dave, so
one?
it'd be
Yeah,
a
and
motion to.
We just gotta do the roll call.
So I'll do the roll call, so just make a motion starting from section 1 as well,
Just line 30 to start.
just line 30.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the section 1 is
library
we're
aid.
waiting on
Right.
insurance data.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to accept the reduction in library aid as presented on the budget line.
Yep.
Joe?
Yes.
We need a second first.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're doing
I'll
great.
second
Dave.
it.
All right.
You're doing great.
All right.
I'll second it.
All right, now we'll do roll call.
Joe?
Yes.
Michelle, aye.
Tina?
Bettina, aye.
David, aye. Jackie?
Jackie?
Aye.
Thank you. Next one would be 2.0 FTE paraprofessionals.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2.0 paraprofessional reduction in, as presented.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Aye.
Joe? Michelle?
Aye.
Bettina?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
Next one would be the 3.0 FTE classroom sections.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the 3.0 FTE classroom sections as presented by the budget. Joe?
Aye.
Oh, I'll second it, sorry.
Sorry, I apologize, yeah.
Aye again.
Aye, aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina?
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Last one would be 1.0 FTE ed support.
You eyed, right?
David, aye.
Thank you.
I'd like to accept a motion, I'd like to make a motion to accept the 1.0 FTE ed support as presented.
I'll second that.
Joe?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Bettina?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
Thank you, Jackie. And so now we're gonna get into the third section, which would be lean consumables and PD. So this is where we went back to the team, and as a team, they looked at the consumable areas and really tried to squeeze those some more. And I will say that they came in with numbers that were higher, but respectfully, I didn't agree, so I kind of brought those down a little bit because it was too draconian, is that the right term? It was just too much. So the numbers that you'll see here, you can see Fuller Meadow, all of these things here, and you can read them as well as I can explain them to you. And you can ask the principals and the directors, their perspective. But just so you know, the total value of those reductions would be $23,950. And I will stop talking, and if the committee has any questions about these areas, lines 36 through 44.
And I think just as a reminder, on line 16, Steve already, again, by looking at FY '25, we already took 114 reduction in supplies and materials coming in, so it's going to be tighter. And we're going to be operating in a tighter environment. If we're down a few sections, then maybe there's fewer supplies and consumables that are
Right.
needed, right? If you kind of think about that corollary.
Yep.
And so then this was just really asking the principals and the directors to take an extra look, and as Steve said, he adjusted those things, so these are recommendations from the team on the bottom there, and if it was the will of the committee to take those, I know it's a little bit laborious, but it would have to be a line-by-line, motion second, roll call.
Yeah.
Okay,
Multiple times.
we're ready.
Okay, so again, these numbers, they're not catastrophic, they're not huge numbers. I think the biggest one is like $4,000 to PD stipends. Another 6,000 to stipends.
Right.
Do we know like what stipends those are?
We would work that out.
Right.
Okay.
We would work that out.
But the rest are just, $1,000 or $2,000 to just supplies and books. And again, like you said, if we're reducing sections,
Correct.
then we wouldn't need the supplies for said sections.
And again, I say it only as a reminder, to remember going in, we're already down 114 in supplies, down 80 in PD, and down 23 in facilities. And Michelle, to your point, as things become more apparent as we move on, maybe those are a place that we look to, revisit.
Okay.
Yep.
These are all comfortable numbers.
Yep, all vetted with everybody on the team.
Sorry, Bettina?
I wouldn't say
Good.
acceptable. I don't know how comfortable, but like, we're willing to make that recommendation. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you, Joe, for the clarification.
So we're ready to vote? I'd like to, make a motion to accept Full Metal principal supply reduction.
Oh, sorry.
Joe?
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye. I'd like to make a motion to reduce Full Metal general supplies by 2,000.
Second that.
Joe?
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye. I'd like to make a motion to reduce Full Metal library books by 700.
Second that.
Joe?
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie? Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye. I'd like to make a motion to reduce Full Meadow CCIM supplies by 3,000.
Second that. Aye.
Joe? Michelle?
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye. I'd like to make a motion to reduce Full Meadow PD stipends by 4,000.
Second that. Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye. I'd like to make a motion to reduce Hal Manning special ed supplies by 1,000.
I think you skipped one.
CCIM, Dave.
So CCI.
Steve's jumping ahead of you with the approved.
Sorry, no, I'm just doing a couple things.
There's two of them, though. No, it's different, Hal Manning.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So
Line
I'd like
41.
to select, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the Hal Manning CCIM supplies by $4,050.
Second that. Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye. I'd like to make a motion to reduce the Hal Manning special ed supplies by 1,000.
Second that. Aye.
Joe?
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye. I'd like to make a motion to reduce Hal Manning tech hardware by 1,700.
Second that. Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye. I'd like to make a motion to reduce Hal Manning stipends by 6,000.
Second that. Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
Thank you, everyone. So if I may give you a summary of where you're at. Total reductions that the committee has voted and approved at this point in time equate to $637,838. Originally, our gap was $774,313, so when we do $774,313 less the $637,838, our current gap above the guideline budget is $136,475. And so again, we're waiting for the insurance, and that's worth about $108 if anything happens with that, so that's a potential if. All right, so we're just keeping our eyes peeled, and as soon as we know more, we'll bring that forward. But thank you all very much. Really appreciate this.
Yeah, I would thank the team. This is not an easy task, as you can imagine, when we're trying to navigate all this and have these conversations, and we're making sure that we're including all the moving parts and all the people in these conversations. So I give kudos and thank you to the team for all of their work on this, and we'll continue to monitor this, and we'll bring updates to the committee as we move through the weeks ahead.
Excellent. Thank you, all the department heads. Steve?
Thank you, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And Costa, we'll share this with everybody, and then we're gonna put a page in the budget book that tracks the action that's been taken, so it'll be another informational piece that I'll try to put together tomorrow, and it'll feed into the book.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is policy subcommittee, motions needed, so I need to make a motion to waive.
Yeah, BGB.
I'd like to make a motion to waive policy BGB.
I'll second that.
Joan?
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the motion.
I'm sorry, the motion is to waive
Sending you
policy.
down, we're sending you
Yeah, send it
back.
back here. Okay.
We're waiving BGB, Jackie.
Okay, thank you, yes, aye.
So we need to update, you want to go over?
Yeah, I'll go through these,
Want to go
yep.
through the policies?
So thank you for waiving BGB. Again, for the community, BGB is the policy and how we approve policy. And when we have our policy subcommittee, we sort of bypass BGB because that requires multiple readings at multiple meetings. And we have put a policy subcommittee in place to do all of that work ahead of time. So I thank Dave for sitting on that committee. And we have members from Boxford, a member from Boxford, a member from Middleton as well. So we brought before the policy sub before the holidays 6 policies. We'll just go with the order that they are in the drive. So we'll start with ECAB. This is a new policy from MASC. Steve Clifford and I looked at this as well. This is just access to buildings and grounds, and it's just this idea that the buildings and grounds are a community investment, and we want to make sure that obviously the public has access, but during school hours, access to the public grounds and buildings are restricted to student, staff, and those with legitimate business. Those visiting for recognized business must follow the visitor policy. During outside of school hours, public is welcome to use the school grounds under dawn to dusk, under any procedures promulgated by the superintendent. Such use is secondary to any use by the school, a district activity as provided through rental or donation. And so it's just the opportunity this gives Steve and facilities an opportunity. We often will have at some of our campuses people who maybe just decide to engage in an activity play tennis during the day, and that's on school property. That's not something necessarily during the school day. So it allows us the opportunity to put signage up in the school. If we have this policy in the background, we can point to this policy. And Steve, I think your goal is ultimately to get signs up at all 6 campuses, correct?
Yes.
Speaking to all of that. So reviewed and approved by the policy subcommittee. So we'd be seeking a motion tonight by the Middleton School Committee to approve policy ECAB as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion. Joe?
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie? Jackie, were you able to hear the motion?
Sorry, I was muted, aye.
Okay, David, aye.
Great. Next one is policy EFBA. This is a new policy from MASC, just basically making sure that our schools are committed to complying with USDA non-discrimination regulations, which we are. In compliance with these regulations, provide substitutions to the school food service program at no extra cost for children who are unable to eat the meal served because of perhaps a disability or other special dietary reasons. So just making sure that we are in alignment with USDA policy, and this policy, make sure that we are, and we are anyway. Steve does this all the time with Whitson, so we'd be reviewed and approved at subcommittees. We'd be seeking a motion at Middleton School Committee to approve EFBA as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
Thank you. Next policy is a review or a revision. We had already approved this policy back in March of '25. This is policy GBEBC. This is gifts to and solicitations by staff. So this is just talking about conflict of interest law. A gift cannot be more than $50. Class gifts cannot be more than $150. None of that changes. What has changed is the red language, and so MASC has added this, and it's basically about raffles and games of chance. By state law and regulation, raffles and games of chance may not be organized by school as the sponsoring organization, and employees are thus barred from participating in activities unless doing so as a member of a sponsoring organization, such as a parent or booster organization as defined by state law and regulation. And then all gifts and donations to the district must be accepted by a vote of the school committee, which we have that on our agenda every single month. So this was reviewed and approved by the policy sub, seeking a motion to accept the revision to policy GBEBC.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
In that same vein, on policy JJE, this is a revision as well. This was last reviewed and looked at in 2025. The only different language is the red, and so this talks about student fundraising activities. The committee recognizes that families have different resources. Those differences should, as much as possible, not be highlighted by school activities, including fundraising, just kind of being cognizant of that component. Changing wish to would, and then students and student groups are barred by state law and regulation from organizing raffles or games of chance, participating in the sales of or purchasing tickets. So similar language, but now that's just in the student fundraising activity as well. Approved and reviewed by the subcommittee prior to the holidays, and seeking a motion from Middleton School Committee to approve policy JJE as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
So clearly someone did something with a raffle somewhere across the state, because the next policy is policy KBE, which is relations with parents and booster organizations, and the new addition there is parents and booster organizations wishing to conduct raffles and games of chance must comply with all applicable required federal, state, and local laws and regulations, including but not limited to receipt of all permits and the filing of all required reports and schedules, reviewed and approved by the policy sub, seeking a motion to approve policy KBE tonight at Middleton School Committee.
I will make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Tina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
Last one, new policy from MASC around parent advisory councils, that MGL, Mass General Law, requires the formation of specific parent advisory councils, CPAC being one, which we have a very healthy one with good communication with our CPAC and our special ed department. And also an English language learner parent advisory council. That's required if a school district has operating a language acquisition program for EL students serving 100 or more in a particular population. So this is just making sure that schools are abiding and putting together parent advisory councils for specific populations within their school district. New policy, review and approved at policy sub, seeking a motion to approve KBG as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Tina?
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
Awesome, guys, thank you. I know that can be tedious, and again, the subcommittee really does the super tedious work, so thank you again to Dave and Candace in Topsfield and Aisha in Boxford. Great, so that's the policy book. Our next meeting is February 2, so that is at 5:30 here at Fuller Meadow. If we get more information, or we think we need to park a meeting between now and then, we will certainly reach out to Jackie as chair and do that. We may have to, at some point between now and April, plug another one in like we typically do. But kudos to everybody for having to navigate this and not have our Saturday budget meeting. I think that's, again, Steve and ClearGov and all those pieces have allowed us to do that. I don't have any others. I don't know if the committee has any others. Great.
No, we need to do a motion, right?
So now we just need bills and payrolls.
So we need to make a motion.
Steve, what do you need the motion for that?
Motion to approve the bills and payroll as listed, and that document is in the drive. You see the, it says,
Middleton summary page.
yeah, exactly, thank you. So there are 2 payrolls, 3 bill warrants. So to approve as listed, Courtney, you have the information.
Thank you, thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the bills and payroll as presented.
I'll second that motion. Joe?
Aye.
Michelle, aye.
Bettina, aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
David, aye.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, Dave, can I abstain? Just because I'm not there.
But
Absolutely, that's fine.
But do you need my signature on that? Do I need to come to the office to sign that?
No, I think because we have signatures on it, we have in the majority of the committee, everyone's
Okay.
voted it, we're fine. And if there's an issue,
Okay.
if Mrs. Wood has an issue, then I'll let you know, but I think we're fine.
Okay,
Jackie
thank you.
succeeded. Okay, so, I got a motion to adjourn.
you got it.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I will second that.
Michelle?
Aye.
Jackie? Oh, sorry, Bettina. Bettina? Jackie?
Oh, aye.
David, aye.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.